Welcome to this deep dive on how to release emotions. Most of us were never taught how to deal with painful emotions, especially how to release them. We tend to suppress our emotions, try to escape them, or simply drown in them. And many of us are not even aware how many stagnant emotions we carry inside of us and the effect they have on us, our moods, how they color our experience and our lives. We might feel exhausted, drained, anxious, numb, disconnected from ourselves and our environment. But this is not necessary. In this video, I want to explain to you the underlying mechanisms and structure of emotions and how you can release them. I am Andrea. I have a PhD in computer science and I'm a certified breathwork facilitator. And in the last few years, I have explored inner work, emotional healing, and spirituality, both personally and professionally. I know what it feels like to drown in grief, in shame, and in guilt. And I also know what it's like to feel numb and disconnected, like you don't feel anything at all. And I want to share with you the perspectives and the tools that have helped me to get to the other side and live a much brighter and lighter life. Now, I have my very own perspective that is very analytical and structured, and I want to share this here with you. It might be supportive for you. However, I'm not sharing universal truths. I'm sharing a perspective. Take what resonates for you. Let's get started. What are emotions? There are many ways to define emotions. I'm going to share my own perspective for the purpose of this video. And for this, I'm going to distinguish between feelings and emotions. Let's look at feelings first. A feeling pops up spontaneously as a result of something that happens in the present moment. Let's look at an example. Let's say this is you, even if it doesn't look like you. And let's assume I make you a compliment. What a great sweater, or what a great presentation you just gave at work. Then this will most likely initiate a feeling inside of you. You might feel happy that I gave you a compliment. You might also feel embarrassed, not knowing how to respond to the compliment. Or you might also feel a bit of fear because you didn't expect to receive a compliment like that. So feelings pop up like this. Now let's look at another example that lies much further in your past. Let's look into your childhood. Let's assume this is you as a child, and this is one of your favorite toys, your favorite dinosaur. And now let's assume another person here comes along and takes away your dinosaur and insults you, tells you what a horrible person you are, how stupid you are. How is that going to make you feel? Probably some sadness because they took your favorite toy. Some shame because they insulted you. And some anger because they crossed your boundary. Now, those feelings that you feel can turn into emotions. Emotions are stagnant feelings that are kept and stored in our body that we were not able to release. What does that mean? If we don't express our feelings when they pop up and don't receive emotional support from our environment to handle the situation, then those feelings become emotions. I'm going to give you an example. Let's consider again this example. This other kid took away your favorite toy. You are kept here crying because they insulted you as well, feeling ashamed and feeling angry. Now let's say your caregiver comes here. Your caregiver comes, first of all, they say, it's going to be all right. They allow you to cry. They allow you to express your emotions, they validate them, but then they also tell the other person, please return that toy. Maybe they also ask the other kid to apologize to you. They make you feel safe in this situation, make you feel seen. And this way you're able to express your emotions, and this way they are being released. Now, let's consider another scenario. Let's assume again this other kid took away your dinosaur And now again, your caregiver is showing up. This time your caregiver shows up differently. They see you cry and immediately say, "Stop crying. Don't make such a fuss about this. It's just your dinosaur. And it probably takes two to fight, so it's your fault. Pull yourself together." In this case, the caregiver did not validate your feelings. They actually pushed you to suppress them. You stopped crying. You also have to stop and suppress your anger. And you also feel guilty. You feel like it's your fault that the other kid took away your dinosaur. And in this case, the feelings stay in your body. In this case, they become emotions. This means they stick in your system and weigh it down. Now, when I say that they stay in your body, I really mean that they stay in your system and are connected with your nervous system. This especially happens in events that we perceive as very traumatic and where we're not able to express our emotions and don't see the support that we need to overcome the situation. There's even science showing more and more that the event itself is not so important, like the taking away of the toy and the insulting is not so important as how we've been treated afterwards. Are we able to release our feelings? Are we receiving support? A very good example that demonstrates this very clearly is what happens in the animal kingdom. Let's consider, for example, a deer and a tiger. The tiger is trying to hunt the deer is running away, and let's say the deer somehow manages to escape. The deer has just faced an incredible trauma. It almost died. It had to run for its life. And what animals often do in this case is that they shake the stress that they've just experienced out of their nervous system. And this way, by shaking it out, they're then able to regulate themselves. They shake and they take some deep breaths. And this way, the deer will usually be very soon after it's been attacked, grazing calmly in the field again. They usually do not develop PTSD or any kind of trauma response, especially when they're in the wild and not in captivity. On the other hand, we as humans are often trained to suppress our natural instinct to cry, to express our emotions, and to also have safety and comfort in our environment. So emotions are feelings from the past that are still with us in our system, in our body, and they can accumulate over time. So let's look into that. Our emotional baggage. So typically we accumulate a lot of emotions over a lifetime, especially if we're not allowed to express our emotions and don't receive a safe, secure, emotionally supportive environment when we grow up. And this is the case for most of us in our society. What does that mean? In our childhood, every time we were told not to cry, when we're shamed for having feelings, when we're not allowed to express our feelings, we create emotions inside of our system. And those emotions are stored, what I call our emotional cellar. It becomes our emotional baggage. And we always carry this around. We carry it in our body, in our nervous system. And it's not just a little chest like depicted here. In most cases, it's actually a backpack full of emotions, full of fear, anger, shame, guilt, often the emotions that have been accumulating over generations. We often take over the emotional baggage from our parents, and it weighs us down. This is a heavy load. So how does it weigh us down? How does it affect us? Let us look at it emotion by emotion. Now let's look at the most common emotions that we experience in our lifetime and how they weigh us down, how we will see the world through the lens of this emotion. We're going to start with the heaviest emotions first, which is shame. Shame is the feeling that you are unworthy and you just want to disappear and hide. If you carry a lot of shame, you will feel unworthy to receive things, unworthy to take chances, and most likely will be in a state of paralysis, and hiding yourself. The next emotion is guilt. Guilt is the feeling that you've done something wrong, and it often also comes with the way of wanting to punish yourself or punish others. You will most likely perceive the world as evil and unfair. Next comes grief. Grief is the emotion of sadness, the emotion of regretting something and feeling that your life and everything around you is highly tragic. If you are in grief, you will most likely find it difficult to see any hope and feel like you have any agency to change your life. Next comes fear. Fear is an emotion that paralyzes you or makes you withdraw from something you might really want, for example. And the assumption here is that you're not safe, that something you might want to do is not safe. You will probably perceive the world around you as very unsafe, as very scary, and you will not allow yourself to do things because you're too afraid of the consequences. The next emotion is anger. Anger and hatred are emotions that carry a certain energy within them. Usually they come up when a boundary has been crossed, when we feel that something has not been right. If you carry a lot of anger within yourself, you probably perceive the whole world as very angry, very hateful and aggressive. The source of any aggression, war, etc. is typically anger. The next emotion is judgment. Judgment comes from a feeling of being better than someone else, the feeling of knowing what is right and what is wrong, and judging others for being wrong. When you carry a lot of judgment in yourself, you will usually also perceive the world around you as very judgmental, very demanding, and you will likely be stuck in a lot of thoughts around what is right and what is wrong. Now, all the emotions so far have been on the more dense side that activate our nervous system, where we don't feel safe, don't feel regulated. But now we're going to step higher into the emotions that are usually safe and perceived as more comfortable. First, we have acceptance. The feeling of acceptance is a way to surrender and accept how things are without judging what anyone is doing. If we're in a place of acceptance, we have no resistance towards how things are and therefore have a more pleasant experience, even if we don't agree what's happening around us. Another emotion is love. And this is the kind of love that comes unconditionally, where we see the beauty and the perfection in the things that have happened, in the things that presently are. And finally, we have peace, which is a feeling of being content and fulfilled with all that is happening, all that has happened, seeing the perfection of everything, how it had unfolded, and seeing things less from a dual perspective, but from an observer perspective, accepting what is. Now, the order of those emotions is not a coincidence. This order is based on the hypothesis of the scale of emotions by Dr. David Hawkins. This scale reflects the heaviness of the emotion, from the lowest emotion to the highest emotion. And in a spiritual context, it's also often referred to as the frequency. So if we look at you again, and whatever emotional baggage you carry with yourself, it will determine where on this range you're going to average. So if you carry a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, this will usually weigh you down and keep you on the lower side of the scale. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that you cannot experience love and joy and happiness or any of the feelings on the upper side. It more means that it's more difficult for you to access. And whenever you have an experience, you will first see it from the lens of the emotions that you are currently carrying within yourself, that are activated the most within yourself. Let's look at the example with the compliment I gave before. If I give you a compliment and you're in a place of shame and guilt, it will be much more difficult for you to just be happy about it and accept it. You will most likely feel a lot of guilt and embarrassment for me giving you a compliment. Or if you are driving in traffic and you carry a lot of anger or judgment within you, you're most likely gonna feel very unnerved and aggressive when the driver in front of you is, for instance, driving very slow or erratically. Whereas if you're in a place of love, acceptance, or peace, you're going to be very calm. Your nervous system is not going to be activated. And this is what this is about. The heavier your emotional baggage, the easier your nervous system is going to get activated. You're going to have a stress response. If you are releasing your emotions, then this baggage is going to get lighter and lighter, and you're going to be moving up and up and up the scale. And this is also often referred to as raising your frequency. So by letting go of the inner shame you're carrying, the guilt, the fear, the anger, you're moving automatically up on the scale, and this makes it much easier for you to experience love, acceptance, peace. Now, while our emotions are in our emotional cellar, we might not feel them all the time. Typically, there are going to be triggers happening that will bring them out of the cellar. These are typically events like someone is giving you a compliment, someone insults you, you see something fearful on the news. How are you going to respond to that? This usually brings up an emotion. Otherwise, if the emotion is not popping up through a trigger, you will most likely feel a general sense of dis-ease. This can be a general unease, a general restlessness, typically because your nervous system is not regulated. So when an emotion pops out of our emotional cellar, it usually activates 3 different parts within us. And I want to have a quick look at those. First, it triggers our body, our bodily sense. We will feel the emotion in our body. This can be a sensation like a tightening of our chest or our throat, an uneasiness in our belly, maybe tense muscles in our back, etc. The second part is our mind, our attention. The emotion will put certain thoughts into our mind, certain narratives and stories. And third, it will also activate the beliefs that we carry inside of us. These beliefs are typically the stories and narratives that we carry from our childhood that describe who we are, what the world is, what we can expect from the world, etc. And those beliefs are really wired into our brain, into the pathways of our brain. And whenever an emotion pops up, it will activate all 3 different parts of us. What we believe, what we think, and what we put our attention on, and how we feel in our body. So let's look at how we typically deal with when an emotion pops up out of our cellar into our system. How do we typically deal with emotions? I'm going to share with you 6 very common ways how we are taught to deal with emotions, and I will also share why those ways are not supportive for us. Let's start with number 1, distracting ourselves. This means distracting your mind in such a way that you no longer sense or feel your body. This works very well with social media, binge watching your favorite TV shows, video games, podcasts, any kind of mental activity where you are so absorbed that you don't feel your body anymore. And you might have experienced that yourself, that you're so absorbed by something that you don't feel that you're actually cold, that you're hungry, or that you really need to go to the toilet. So why does distracting yourself not really help you with the emotion? The reason is that you're just ignoring the emotion. You're not feeling it in your body. This does not leave any space to actually release it. Now, is there anything wrong about distracting yourself? Of course there isn't. Sometimes we feel so overwhelmed by emotions that it can feel like a relief to distract yourself. But be aware that it's not a way to release your emotion. Second, numbing your body so you don't have to feel the discomfort within your body. This means using things as painkillers or ways to soothe your body so that the discomfort you feel is a bit lessened. Very effective ways to soothe and numb your body are things like sugar, sweets, or the so-called comfort food. This way your body gets things like a sugar rush. You will feel some brief comfort that will distract you and avoid you having to feel the pain that you feel inside. Another very effective substance is alcohol. Alcohol is a very effective painkiller and also limits your consciousness, so you're just feeling less and feel a bit more numb within your body. Other common ways to deal with this are any forms of sexual stimulation that also soothes your body, gives your body pleasure from something else, if just momentarily. There's nothing wrong with numbing your body. It's just not something that's going to help you in the long term because you're treating symptoms and not the root cause. Number 3, projecting your emotions onto someone else or something else. This is a way to feel the emotion in your body, but detach yourself from the underlying narrative around it. What does that mean? Often, especially with very heavy emotions like guilt or shame or hatred, it's easier for us to project it, externalize the emotion to someone else or something else than to feel it ourselves. For example, if we feel a lot of guilt ourselves, we're likely going to be one of the first people who say, this person should be punished if they did something wrong. Or if we carry a lot of judgment around ourselves, we might be very likely judging others, for example, for the way they look, for the way they're treating themselves, if they're lazy, if they are not on time. These usually reflect the judgment we carry around ourselves. So if we judge someone for always being late, it's because we would judge ourselves for being late. And just to be clear, there's a difference between judging and hating someone or disagreeing with someone. I can disagree with the behavior or the viewpoints of another person, but I can do that without expressing it with any strong emotions. If I feel a very strong urge to judge others, to hate others, or wanting to punish them, then this is often a reflection of the emotions I carry within myself. I can disagree with others and still stay calm and centered. Now, why does it not help to project our emotions onto someone else? The reason is we're still not releasing the emotion by throwing it at someone else. It's still with us, as is the belief. In some way, we're only just multiplying the emotions. We're creating more hatred, more judgment in the world by projecting it outside. And this is something very common, and we often do it subconsciously. So if you notice yourself projecting your emotions onto others, then please be kind to yourself. Number 4, seeking external contradiction. This could also be named seeking external validation that what you believe, what you think about yourself is actually not true. For example, if you carry the belief that you are too stupid and you feel ashamed because of that, then you might seek external contradiction to that. You might seek someone who tells you, oh, you're so smart, you're so amazing. And this way you get a contradiction of the belief you carry around yourself that you are not smart enough. And this often happens on a very deep subconscious level. That if we feel a certain sense of shame or unworthiness inside of ourselves, we will try a lot of things to contradict that in the outer world. For example, we might overwork a lot in our job to compensate for our own feeling of unworthiness. Or we may invest a lot of time and effort into our appearance, the way we look, because deep down we feel shame and are afraid that we are not worthy enough the way we look, just without any extra care. Also, this does not help us in releasing the emotion because we're still believing the emotion, we're still believing the underlying story and narrative. We're just trying to find examples that it's not true on the outside instead of just changing it within. And this way, the emotion still stays with us. And this behavior can lead us to be in a very dependent setup as well. Even if we find someone who gives us that external validation, that we feel smart and special, etc., we're really dependent on them. And this can lead to situations like codependency, where we're locked in a structure of needing each other's validation. Number 5, toxic positivity or gaslighting ourselves. This means that we're pretending that everything is all right, even though we don't feel well. For example, we might say, my relationship is not so bad. I'm happy at my job, even though it's not really true. And often, on some level, we're not allowing ourselves to be honest with ourselves. We don't allow ourselves to be unhappy. We might have some beliefs that people expect us to be happy where we are at, or have actual expectations from other people that we are happy in our situation, even though we're not. And also, there's nothing wrong about this, but again, it doesn't help us. It keeps us stuck with the emotion because we're ignoring it. We're not even acknowledging it. Number 6, indulging in the emotion, especially in the victim role of the emotion. This means we use the emotion that we're feeling, the heavy emotion in our situation, to get a tiny bit of gratification from our victim role. For example, everyone is against me. Life is so unfair. Nothing ever works out for me. And in those narratives, we might get some attention from the outside. Some people might feel sorry for us, and our ego might get a small sense of pleasure from being the victim, almost like in a romanticized way. There's also nothing wrong with that, but again, we're not releasing the emotion. We might be crying in our bed, but also kind of enjoying it, enjoying that we are the victim in the situation. And this way, we're grasping on, we're hanging on to the emotion and to the story behind it. And this way, we cannot release the emotion. So, how many of those 6 ways do you recognize? Have you been participating in any of them? I certainly have participated in all 6 of them, and there's nothing wrong with that. Please be aware that we're conditioned to deal with emotions in this way. There is a straightforward way to release emotions that I'm going to share with you right now. It's a bit counterintuitive and also a bit uncomfortable, but it works every time. How can we release emotions from our system? Here is one way that always works for me. It consists of 3 steps. First, allow your body to fully feel the emotion. This means feeling the full discomfort of the emotion, feeling the fear, the shame, the guilt, and the grief. No numbing of yourself with any substances. No distraction, just being present, giving your full attention to your body. Maybe feeling into, how does my body feel? Where do I feel the emotion? And you will probably notice your body releasing in its own way. This might mean that you're crying, that you're wailing, that you're screaming, that you're shaking, that you are yawning, even spitting or throwing up. Anything that comes from your body, any form of release, is going to be good for it. Just surrender to what your body needs to do to feel the emotion. And yes, this can be very uncomfortable, especially with the lower emotions like grief or guilt or shame. You might just want to curl up under your blanket and cry. But every second you do that, you're allowing your body to release. And very important, breathe. Focus on your breath, especially focus on long exhales. This helps you to regulate your nervous system, to move into the relaxed phase for your nervous system. Focus on your breath, focus on your body, and just notice where the emotion is coming up and allow your body to express it. Second, observe the thoughts and stories that are coming up, but don't engage with them. So while you're lying in your bed, maybe curled up and crying, a lot of stories, a lot of thoughts are probably gonna inundate your brain. You might think, oh, there's no hope. I'm a terrible person. What have I done? Why am I so stupid? This will never get better, etc. Just notice those thoughts And be aware that those are just stories. They're only true if you believe them. The opposite is just as true as that story. It's an old story from the past that you've learned, most likely in order to survive in that setup. But you don't have to believe them. It's just as true that you are special, that you are lovable, that everything is going to be all right, that you are a beautiful, worthy person. So allow those thoughts, don't resist them, but don't engage in the stories. Don't try to change those thoughts either. Don't try to change the underlying narrative. Don't think about what you could have done differently. Just observe what pops up, but don't engage with it. Just let it pass through. Third, focus on new stories or new narratives that are more supportive for you. For example, I'm going to be okay. I'm safe. I'm special. I'm worthy. What this person did had nothing to do with me, but just with their internal state. Focus on those. And even though they won't feel real, still connect with them. And this way, every second you're able to do that, to feel the emotion in your body, not connecting to the story and narrative, giving your attention and focus to a different narrative. Every second you do that, you are releasing the emotion from your system. You can imagine the emotion floating out of your body. Just visualize it. And you don't have to do this perfectly. Setting the intention for it already helps. And I want you to notice that there's a difference to toxic positivity from this approach. We are still validating our emotions. We are validating the grief, the fear, the shame we're feeling. We're also validating thoughts and the stories that are coming up. But we decide to redirect our attention to something different, to a new story, to also change the beliefs inside of us. And this way, being able to let go of the emotion. So it's a mix of acceptance, surrender, letting go, and being aware of what we put our attention to. And even if this might feel a bit unusual to you, you probably have already done this unconsciously. Like you might have had a really strong cry about something, something that really upset you, something where you just surrendered to how things were. And after crying, you felt relieved, you felt lighter, you felt much better. And this is because you've let go of the emotion. And this is how you will typically feel after you've let go of an emotion. You will feel some spaciousness, some lightness. This is because you're emptying your emotional cellar, you've made some space. And this is why it can also really help on focusing on new stories, because this way you are filling up the space with some new supportive ideas about yourself. Now, will you feel overwhelmed by the emotions that are coming up? From my experience, the answer to that is no. We're typically only sensing and feeling what we're able to process. In a way, we're never emptying the full cellar at once, but step by step. Also, emotions are often released in layers. They're a bit like onions. So layer by layer, we're gonna let them go. So don't be afraid. You can handle whatever comes up. Even if sometimes it might feel really hard and really tough. You might be lying in your bed, curled up, crying, and feel like you're gonna die. But in that case, just observe. Observe your surroundings. You're safe. You're just releasing a very dense emotion. You are letting go a part of yourself that is ready to die in some sense, a part that hasn't been supportive for you. So trust that you can handle the emotions. You can do this. Now there are some good structured ways and tools to release emotions that I want to share with you very briefly. The one I know the best is breath work. Breath work is a way to regulate your nervous system, and certain types of breath work like holotropic breath work or conscious breath work are supporting you in reaching very deep states of consciousness where you can release emotions in a safe way while your nervous system is regulated. So if you feel interested in breath work, I highly recommend you to try it out. There are also other ways like hypnosis, hypnotherapy, sound therapy, toning using your voice, EFT tapping, and many more. Also, guided psychedelic journeys can be really supportive in releasing emotions. And if you choose to do this in a guided way by a professional, I just highly recommend to make sure that you feel safe with that person, that you have a good feeling in your belly when you work together with them. It's really important that the people you work together with work with integrity, because you will make yourself quite vulnerable, especially if you're working with substances and tools that go deep in your subconscious. So some final words. I believe that a lot of suffering and pain in our world is caused by us not knowing how to release our emotions. And as you've seen, it's not that difficult. It's accessible to all of us. But also be aware that the ways we've been trained to deal with our emotions are actually counterintuitive on how to release them. In fact, in many ways, we've been trained to do the opposite. For example, in many cultures, men in particular are trained to not express their emotions, to not cry, because that would expose a kind of weakness. But I hope you can see here that actually expressing your emotions, connecting with your emotions, is one of the most powerful things you can do, as long as you're also still directing your mind in the right way, directing your mind on the stories you want to believe in. So I invite you to assert yourself, connect with your emotions, and start releasing them. And yes, this might mean that the path to your happiness lies in crying in your bed, but believe me, it works. Remember the scale of emotions we talked about, and think about where you're at right now with your emotional baggage. And by letting go and releasing your emotions, you're just automatically moving upwards. This is just physics. And to release any kind of emotion, you will have to feel it. There's also nothing wrong with not releasing emotions. I just want you to be aware of the different options you have, what you could be doing. There is no right or wrong. They're just different kinds of experiences. And it's most likely easier if you are further up on the scale than further down. And please remember to always be kind to yourself and move at your own pace. I hope this video has been helpful for you and supportive, that there were some things you could take from it. I will also share some more resources in the captions if you want to dive deeper into the topic. If you would like to see more of this kind of videos in the future, then please subscribe to my channel. And please also share your own experiences, share your own perspectives, what resonated, what helps you to release your emotions. Let's share and grow together. Thank you for your attention. I'll see you next time. Much love.